Are you from America or?
Yeah, right.
All from the States, are you? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My name is Kevin Mackin.
Yeah.
And most of us are rectors of seminaries, theologians, graduate schools in the United States. And I'm from New York.
I see.
The state of New York.
I'm John.
Yeah.
I'm a Benedictine monk from St. Vincent in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
I see.
My name is John. I'm a marine listener in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Hong Kong. Presently working on that.
Oh, I see.
Very Fitzgerald, I'm rector of the seminary on the west coast, Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Colin Berkhamshaw.
Yeah.
In the Diocese of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, I see. Oh, tell us spread about. What was your main purpose in coming here? Do you want to just talk generally, or you?
Well, to learn something about Buddhism.
Yeah, I
here
see.
in Thailand.
Yeah. Have you read much on it? Do
Very simply.
Very we have a small book, Buddhism.
Yeah. I'd better give you an outline of the sort of basic ideas then.
Excuse me, are you okay to record?
Sure, yeah.
Can we put that here?
Okay. Yeah. Fine.
It's on there.
Fundamentally, Buddha, like most of us, had problems when he was young. He had all sorts of questions, and he wanted to solve them. So eventually, after some difficulties, he set off from his family, and he went out to try and solve these problems. He went to all sorts of teachers, learned a great deal. But it was only after he had left all his teachers and went off on his own that he finally managed to find the answer to these problems. What we have now is the teaching that came from the Buddha. And the teaching is the whole of the basis of Buddhism. What we have to gain and the results that we attain from this are what we actually do based on this teaching. In other words, the Buddha is the one who's found the way. He found the path, found the way to the solution of these problems. And we try to follow what he did and use the understanding that has come from him in order to clear the way and to put it into practice for ourselves. His teaching fundamentally hinges on the one question of, I'll translate it as discontent, suffering, if you like to call it that. Discontent is prevalent in everybody. It's always there in all sorts of ways, little, big, all the time. It's never ending. And Buddha saw that this was the primary problem. It is in fact our motive. And whenever we do anything, we do it because we feel that we're going to get some more contentment or some less discontent by doing that than if we don't do it. So all the time we're motivated in one way or another by this one factor of discontent, suffering all the time. It's the one thing that's primary in us. You can see the way this works. How often do we have the factors greed and hate arising in all sorts of forms? We're greedy because there's something we feel that we're lacking. When we're lacking something, we want to get it. And sometimes if it's something that's really lacking, really necessary, like food, and we're extremely hungry and so on, that's okay. There's still a certain amount of greed in it, but that's all right. But so many of the things we want, we've created. And we're constantly creating this greed. We're constantly creating discontent all the time, and we're then trying to satisfy it all the time. Hate is exactly the opposite, where there are things we find that we don't want, we don't like, and we try to get rid of them. It's really just the opposite, the other side of the coin, greed and hate. It's the wanting or the not wanting, or the wanting not truthfully, like that. All the time, these are the things that are motivating us, driving us on. Now, in all this, the one fundamental thing that we use, the one law we use all the time, is the law of cause and effect. Because if I want to do something and get a result from it, I always think in terms of cause and effect. If I do this, what's the result going to be? So we use cause and effect to get our results, to predict what we're going to get from our actions. And we go ahead and do things on this basis. If we have wisdom, maybe we get those things. Mostly we don't. We do all the wrong way. We go doing all the wrong things, thinking they're going to bring us the results that we want, and they don't. They bring us almost the opposite. This you can see by reading any newspaper. You can see the way people act. Lacking morals, lacking wisdom, lacking any understanding of the way life works. They go doing the wrong things, they get the wrong results, and they suffer the whole time. And the more they go on doing things in the direction they do it, the more they're going to suffer. It's not so much that there's anybody causing suffering to them. They bring it on themselves by their own actions. Because whenever we act, we, so to speak, we program ourselves by that action. When we program ourselves, sooner or later, that's going to come out in a result. That's going to come back on us. And the Buddha saw this, and he taught that this is the way it works. And if we want to get free from this discontent, we've got to develop wisdom. We've got to know where we're going. We've got to know what sort of results come from our actions. And by that, we've got to decide on what actions we should do and what we shouldn't. Most people don't know. I mean, take the question of morality. How many people have got any real understanding of the way morality works? If people don't understand the way morality works, they'll go and do all the wrong things, thinking they're doing right. In the West, this is very prevalent now. Morality is really a problem, and it's causing a great deal of trouble. And it's just due to complete misunderstanding of the way it all works. People say, well, why should we be moral? And they think in terms of, many of them sort of have got a disbelief in any God or anything of that sort. And they think, well, there's nothing there to cause me any trouble back from what I do. Therefore, if I do immoral things, I'll get away with it. But they can't understand that they change themselves every time they do an immoral action. And they change themselves in a manner that's going to cause them to steer them into a situation where they'll get that result back on them. This is the way the Buddha saw it. He taught that because this discontent is all caused, so we can get free from it. We can get free from it by learning to develop wisdom, to develop understanding. And we can develop this understanding by training ourselves, first of all, to sharpen our minds, to control ourselves, to be able to stop the restless waywardness of the mind, so that we can hold the mind still on something and penetrate deeply with wisdom. And if we can do that, then we can turn and use that mind to probe the questions we should probe. The first questions, of course, are, what is this body? Is it me? Is it mine? What is this mind? Is it me? Is it mine? Not the questions out in the world, because all those questions come back to oneself. And so we've got to go to the center, which is oneself. If you try and solve the problems in the world, it's endless. They're always, as soon as you solve one, another one arises. So what we've got to do is to solve the problems in that one which creates the problems, which is oneself. And if one can solve the problems in oneself, the problems of the world will automatically be solved. I can explain that later if you like. The Buddha taught that to solve these problems, to overcome this discontent, we have to practice a path. And that path roughly consists in the training of ourselves in moral ways, to start with. Secondly, the developing of the mind, and thirdly, developing of wisdom based upon mindfulness and effort. Now, mindfulness means the keeping of one's mind in the present, the being aware of oneself all the time. Not letting one's mind wander about, thinking about everything, forgetting oneself. This was what he taught. And he said, and those who followed him have said, that the results are very well worthwhile. That is the basis of Buddhism. I've given you the core of the thing now. There's many, many things have grown on that, round about it. Many of these factors I've talked about need expanding greatly. But that is the basis. It's the understanding of our situation as a situation of discontent, and it's the seeing of the path or the way to cure this discontent. That is the basis of Buddhism. All of it. What we find when we cure that discontent is a situation which nobody has been able to describe. Simply because in this world, all the things we find are conditioned. They all come under the laws of cause and effect. Everything is under conditions. We have, in any situation, there are the conditions bringing that situation about. The end result is an unconditioned state where there are no conditions. It's quite completely free. And it's quite incomprehensible to somebody who hasn't got there. I don't know what it is, I haven't got there. So that's the basis anyway. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that at all.
You're not Thai.
No, I'm English.
And then I'm just curious about what attracted you to Buddhism here in Thailand. And
difficult to say, really.
Because there were also other. I noticed that some of them are.
Four of us were.
Four are English.
No, I'm English. There's one American, two Canadians.
Two Canadians, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. And they've come out here variously in one way or another. But for myself, my interest was caught by reading. I mean, I was brought up rather vaguely as Anglican. I couldn't really see much in the Anglican Church. I mean, they're good people. They're good moral people and so on, but morality on its own isn't enough. We've got to go a lot deeper than that. Because of the situation in the Anglican Church, I wasn't really interested in religion. Then I chanced to come across a book on Buddhism, and this interested me a great deal. So I read quite wildly all sorts of books for a while on Buddhism. Then I thought I should investigate one or two other religions, so I looked into Hinduism, which is a terrific hodgepodge of things. It isn't one thing, it's 100 things. Then I looked into Christianity. I was quite interested in Catholicism. But I wasn't satisfied. I mean, I sort of made a choice, but I'm not really sure that it was a choice. I think the choice was already there. I mean, that I should go the way of Buddhism.
The reason I asked is the way you were explaining it,
Yeah.
like even Christianity begins with the whole brokenness, the alienation,
Yeah.
The human condition.
Yes.
And there's something radically wrong.
Yeah.
And then the question is there some power
Yes.
that can heal this brokenness? And then you
Yes.
have all these ideologies that attempt, even Marxism attempts to deal with
Yeah.
this brokenness or alienation,
Yes.
but there's a power beyond us.
Yes.
And in many ways, there seems to be, a similarity. The radical questions that
You can find some, yes. Whether, I mean, the old question comes, do all religions lead to the same end? And this you can't say, because one's got to be able to define what one means by any one of these religions. And really speaking, under the heading of one religion, there are dozens of things, just depending on the individual and how he believes it. So it's not as simple as it seems at all, whether they lead to the same thing. I mean, I can interpret Christianity in terms which fit very closely to Buddhism. I'm not sure that every one of the dogmas can be fitted in, but still, I mean, the general sort of ideas there can be. But this depends on the person who practices, whether he can fit it in or not. The thing is, the way the Buddha taught is very definitely that of the idea of a disease. We have the disease, which is discontent. One has got to see the cause of the disease, which is our wanting, our greed, our hate, what we call our defilements, really, which are always coming up, pushing us in the wrong way. I suppose you'd call it the devil. It's inside, it's not out there. And this is always pushing us in the wrong direction. It's psychological factors in ourselves coming up the whole time. And we've got to realize that this is the cause of the disease, and to cure it, we've got to overcome these things. We've got to have a regular path and a regular way of practice and training to be able to do that. It comes down to that. I mean, we have very firmly the idea of what we call the chitta. Chitta is the nearest English term translation to soul. The only trouble is I'm not quite sure what soul means in English. It's not that simple. In fact, I've got a far better idea what chitta means than soul. I don't know that you can really equate the two exactly. It is something there which, in its original state, is utterly incomprehensible. It's beyond all ways of thinking, all ways of understanding the nature of the chitta. But in its modifications, it's sort of used by these defilements to produce what we call myself, and all the sort of ways that self works. And when it's like that, it's the defilements take control, and they take the power of the chitta, and they use the power of the chitta, which is the human power, to go in the wrong direction. Because of that, there's big trouble everywhere. And it is just these defilements that are troubling the world. I mean, we get all sorts of problems in the world, like the atomic bomb, and like dictatorships, and all the rest of it. But fundamentally, the real trouble in the world are not these things, but the kilesas, the defilements in the individual's heart. And if one can't get at those, one will never really cure the problem at all. Because that's what it all stems from. As the first verse of one of the prime books in Buddhism says, mind is the forerunner of all states. They all arise because of mind. If one acts evil in an evil way, that evil will come back on one. If one acts in a good way, that good will come back.
When you explain the teachings of Buddha. The question that arises in my mind is these teachings should be applicable to everyone who is a Buddhist. Why the necessity of monasticism? I presume you've been monk for a number of years now in this monastery. The majority of people would actually lead all of these teachings in their own right, not as monks. And so the vocation of monk would be special in what way?
You've probably got in mind Christian monasticism as a comparison. The thing is, you have to see what happened at the time of the Buddha. At the time of the Buddha, and to a little extent still, the monk was a wanderer. He had just his bowl, his robes, not much else. Just one or two possessions on him, and he'd wander about from place to place. He'd live outside the village usually, and he'd live in the forests. And the idea was that they had the situation in India, as we have in Thailand now, where he could go and get food in the village. People would give him the food for the merit they get from it. And he would then have time to go out and do the proper contemplation and the practices which he should be doing. The thing is, when one does meditation practice and one starts developing the mind, it becomes very sensitive. When it becomes sensitive, it can very easily be disturbed by things. And we're always taught how when one's mind is becoming developed, one's got to be very careful. I mean, a monk whose mind is becoming developed like that, he can just see a woman and that can cause him quite a bit of trouble. So we're told to control the senses, not just look at everything and let one's mind and one's senses be wandering about, to try and keep it inside all the time. Now, for somebody in lay life, if they have to go about their business in lay life in the ordinary way, doing a job, meeting other people, traveling, so on, it's I won't say impossible, but almost impossible for them to really get a control of the mind. So there's got to be the situation where people can get away quite long periods of time, and they can live, and they can then learn how to control their minds. And if they can control them, and if they can get rid of the kilesas, then they can come back. They can help other people, and they're in a situation to really be able to help, because they are the teachers. And they're the ones who have cured the kilesas, the defilements. Sorry, I'm using Pali words. They've cured the defilements. They have the wisdom to see what's the right way. The average person hasn't. And because of this monasticism, or the situation of the wanderer is the best, really, it's a very valuable tradition. I'll say, though, that the number of monasteries which really practice the way, or it's practiced, who try and follow the way as it should be practiced, is few. The number of monks who really know what they should be doing is few. In Thailand, there's an enormous number who are what one might call traditional monks. They're just following old traditions. Many of them don't really understand the teaching at all. I mean, here we're very fortunate. We have a very good teacher, and he can lead people well.
Can you tell us something about the daily life here?
Yes, daily life here is really extraordinarily simple. First of all, we get up on our own and do our meditation practice early in the morning. Some people will stay up all night even. Or one can get up early, about 4 o'clock, something of that sort, sit and do meditation practice until it's time, when it gets light, to come down to the sala here and to clean up, get it ready. We scrub the floor with those coconuts there. And after that, it's time to go for the Pindapata, we call it, go around the village with a bowl to get food.
What do you call that again?
Pindapata. Pindapata. Yes, it's a Pali word.
Yeah.
Pindapata. We go around the village, they give us the food there. We come back. Then the food is brought to the middle of the platform here. And it's shared out amongst all the monks. We have our food, we eat in the bowl, we eat only with a hand, we don't use knife and fork. And afterwards we go and clean up the bowl, clean up the sala, and usually the teacher will give some talk to the lay people, because a lot of lay people come here. He usually gives some talk to them. And after that, we return to our huts, and there's time then for us to do more of our meditation practice. Until it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It varies between about 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on the time of the year. We sweep the ground, and after that we have a wash at the well. It's the ordinary cold water. Beyond that, again, we have time around for ourselves for the rest of the day. Sometimes there's a meeting in the evening. The teacher will call a meeting and give a talk to us. Not every day, sometimes. Sometimes we have some work to do. Usually work, sometimes a little bit of building, sometimes other work. That's about what it comes to. It's quite simple. As far as the chanting and things like that sort are concerned, mostly we do it on our own. The thing is, here, this is a practice wat, and it's not like the city wats where they go out a lot and they do chanting and so on in the houses. We do very little of that. The only time normally where monks will go out is if there's a funeral. Somebody dies in the village, they go out to that.
Is there a master-disciple relationship?
Yes. Yes, there is, I would say. Quite definitely.
How does the young people who come here for a period of time, how do they go about finding the master, or how does the master instruct them?
First of all, by the talks in the evening, which we have every now and then. At other times, often when we're having a meal, some subject will come up and he'll talk about it. Sometimes he tells people off. He can be quite fierce. And he goes about the place at times and sees things and tells people, why aren't you doing this? Or why is this like this? Why didn't somebody think? It's all the time pointing to developing of mindfulness and thinking all the time, thinking what one's doing, keeping one's mind on what one's doing, and to think what is the right way of doing things, in all things like that.
How does the master become the master? How would you, like your administration here, the teacher, I presume, is the one who is in charge of the monastery?
Yes.
And how
He
does
is,
one
yes.
arrive at that state?
He was taught by another teacher named Ajahn who was very famous in the northeast. And he had many disciples following him. He was with him for about 9 years altogether. And he had to do his own meditation practice under the eye of Ajahn Mun. When he gained success in the meditation practice, then he started going off to the forest on his own. The forest is an excellent training. There's nothing like it. He practiced for a long time. His teacher taught him the way to go, so steered him in the right direction, until finally he came to understand. When he came to understand, he's then in a position to become a teacher, but he didn't. he went round almost every province in Thailand. He went walking round. And why he settled here was because he came from this village, and his mother was very old, and he decided that he would look after her. She was a nun, and so she came to stay here down in the compound down there with another old lady, and he then settled here. First of all, the villagers came and he gave talks to them, and they liked the talks, so they gave this land. They gave the land for the monastery. Then other monks came here because they liked his teaching. They found what he taught was very good. And it spreads like that. In Buddhism there's no... it's not sort of fixed, in that if you go to a monastery and go under a teacher, it's an arrangement between yourself and the teacher. Anybody can leave the monastery anytime they like. Whether they can come back again depends on the teacher. Again, one is quite free to leave the robe anytime. It must be like this because we have quite rigid and strict moral rules, and it must be that if a person can't stand them, and if they feel that they're going to do something in the robes which would be extremely bad, then they can give up the robe any time. Far better that they give up the robe and go and do what they want as a lay person, and then come back into it again, and they should do it in the robe.
What happens when the teacher who founded this monastery, which is practicing monastery, when that teacher dies, does the monastery, do you then seek another teacher?
It's usually a pretty haphazard sort of succession. There's no fixity in it. Sometimes you'll get one or two teachers following one another, and they're good. But there's no certainty in this.
So you may have to move to another monastery seeking another teacher?
Yes. It depends on what one's done, how far one's gone, how much one understands.
I see.
Some people will go to another teacher, some will go off on their own.
There are a lot of very young men here. How old can you come at any age, and can you? I've been told that most Buddhists have to spend at least some time, a month or two.
Sometimes.
A month. Do most? Is it expected that you stay a month or two at least?
There is in Thailand the idea that many people, before while they're still young, will become monks for a short period, sometimes a month, sometimes just a few weeks. Personally, I don't like the idea, but it's part of the tradition now, and one can't change it. To me, I think it's wrong that a person should become a monk when they're already thinking of leaving the road. That's a personal view of mine, but I mean it's very prevalent nowadays. And some people come for the 3 months of the rainy period. For the person who's more sincere and who wants to remain a monk, generally they will remain a monk for quite a while anyway. Some can't stand it, they have to leave quickly. But most can stay on for a while. And usually they'll stay on for, I would say the average is about 2 years, 3 years, something like that.
Are you familiar with the kind of monastery that we have in Hong Kong and in China? That they are largely, there's a great deal of, in major periods of one's life, one will seek the wisdom of the monks as to how to act in the future, marriage, and whatnot. And also there's a good bit of liturgy that's carried on in the
Yes, I know a little bit about that, but not a lot. I've never practiced it. But this is, I would say, things that have grown on to it. Sort of moss and creepers, you know. The thing is, the practice of the way is tough. It's not easy. One's mind is pretty wild, and to tame it is no easy job. And as soon as you start taming it, all these defilements start coming up trying to prevent you. I mean, they're like demons. They almost got a sort of demonic nature. They come up exactly where you're trying to push hardest.
Do you have contact with your family in the UK?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
You write frequently?
Well, I write, not frequently. I do write, yes. Yes, there's nothing to stop us doing that.
In a monastery, each one is structurally different, but yet there are some elements that are essential to every monastery.
Most monasteries will have, for instance, a central sala like this. The architecture may vary, but they'll have a central sala. They'll have places where the monks live. Most, but not all, have what they call the body, which is it's a hall where most of the sort of ceremony is done. It's got a Buddha image at one end of it, and there's actually a boundary, an official boundary that's been set round it, so that the functions of the order can be performed in that. There's quite a comprehensive legal system of it. The monastery will have an abbot, of course.
Will have an abbot?
Well, effectively, yes. We use the Western term abbot. Here it's Chow.
Is that the teacher?
It may be the teacher or may not. It's not certain. Usually, I think if one can say if the teacher's well known, he is the abbot usually.
The ceremonies of Buddhism of today, they would not be essential. Or I'm asking questions, but they would not be essential to the way of Buddha, or would they?
The ceremonies, most of the ceremonies are not essential. No. But as far as the order is concerned, we have a very large number of rules, and we have a lot of procedure, the way things should be done, and so on. And although as far as the going on the way is concerned, it's not absolutely essential. It can be used as a help, as a training. Quite a lot of training in that. Many of the rules, in fact, are to try and make one mindful, to keep one's mind on what one's doing.
The monk who would come for 3 months, for example, would it be expected that during that time he would be ordained?
Yes, he's ordained, yes.
So anyone over 20 who comes for, let's say, even a shorter period of time, there would be the ceremony of ordination.
If they become ordained, people don't have to be. I mean, a layperson can come and stay in the waters if the abbot lets them. They can come and stay. It's possible they can become what we call a white-robed lay follower as well. It just takes a few simple moral precepts. They wear white robes. It's quite the ones you see mostly are the mejis, the nuns, like that. But it can also be for men as well. the next state is that of a Samanera, novice. And he wears robes. And the novice can be quite young. They can be, well, I mean, you do get some about 5 years old. The rule actually is if he's old enough to scare a crow.
If he's old enough
to scare a crow. That's the rule.
And those up until 20 are novices.
Up to 20 they can be a novice. Above 20 they can be ordained as a bhikkhu. Some do remain novices after 20, but it's not very usual.
What does ordination empower you to do?
Ordination really allows you, first of all, to wear the robes. It means that you become a member of the Sangha, the order. It's called. You can go into the Sangha Kamma, which is the sort of acts of the Sangha, they're called. They're sort of legal acts. And there are various things that we do like that. By wearing the robes and by being a member of the order, one can also go out and one can get food. People will give food. They would with a novice too. But the advantage of being a monk over a novice is that you have the rules, and they're much stricter rules, which is much more of a restraint on one. It's very easy for people to slip where rules are concerned, but if you know that the rules are there, people don't like breaking them, and that helps a great deal. I mean, I expect in Catholicism you've probably got quite a lot of rules too, and the rules are a help. They act as guidelines, where you should go and where you shouldn't. The thing is, if you have those rules and you keep within those, then you can feel completely free of any blame as far as the world goes. One feels the sense that everything in the world's okay, as far as I'm concerned. That leaves me free to go my own way of trying to control my own mind. The thing is, if one doesn't have those rules, one often doesn't know where the boundary is. And then one starts thinking, well, I wonder if I should do that or I shouldn't. And one's worrying about things outside when one should be going inside. So it's quite important anyway. Psychologically important.
Does this monastery have any relationship, say, for example, to the head of Buddhism? Say in Bangkok, wherever the head resides.
Well, yes. There are two sects in Thailand, Dhammayutta and Mahanikaya. This is a Dhammayutta monastery. And this is the smaller sect. It's usually looked on as being the more strict of the two. I think generally it is. It just happens that most of the good teachers are in Dhammayutta too. And there is a hierarchy between us here and the sort of chiefs in Bangkok, but the hierarchy is not really part of Buddhism. It's a social thing, and most of us don't take much notice of what goes on in Bangkok. Practically. The man that really has the power is the individual abbot of each one. They're the most powerful.
The doctrine of reincarnation, is that an essential part of the Buddhist belief?
Oh yes. I mean, we don't actually call it reincarnation. There's a subtle difference, but it is more or less that. The thing is, we say causes have effects. If causes have effects, and those effects haven't come when one dies, they've got to have an effect somewhere. There's something there there's a force there, if you like. That's got to have its outlet, and that force can have its outlet depending on the nature of the action that's been done. So, depending on actions, that force can arise anywhere, throughout the whole realm of existence. I mean, we have a quite firm belief in the realms, the gods, the devils and the hell regions and so on. They're all there. In fact, many of the monks say that you can see them. You have to actually have a look and see for yourself if your meditation's good enough.
So that each person will, it's a continual process of being reborn again.
Yes, roughly you can put it like this. When we have these defilements, one of the strongest is that of wanting existence. And which promote our existence. And by existence we mean existence in the form of life, where there is sensation and some form of knowledge and so on. This is what when we tend to promote these actions, then those actions must have their result. And so we tend to go on, depending on our actions. We do our actions, and the actions themselves produce the next life.
The presence of the statue of Buddha in the monastery, is it simply to remind you that he is the great teacher of the way?
Yes. Originally, after the Buddha, they never had a statue at all. What they used to have is an umbrella, because the umbrella was like a tent that was used in the forest, and they used to have that and a seat. The idea being that seat was ready for the Buddha if he should ever come and give a talk. But the seat was there, and they used that as a sort of focal point. Later it became common to use to make images. I think the original idea of the images was that the image is made, if it's made by a skilled person, it will depict a certain psychological state. And if a person has got, the mind is sort of cleared enough, they can see this in the image. They can realize what that's meant to portray. In other words, it's a teaching symbol. But now I'm afraid they're made just because people think they're soi at a given time. They like them, they're beautiful.
In regard to your comments on rules, that sometimes we choose not to follow the rules, is there some formal way of if a person separates himself from the rules or from the community, something? When a person chooses to do this, is there some formal ceremony, some formal way of rejoining to become a part of the group or to?
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, if one breaks the rules, it will depend on which rule. The most severe ones, there's no way, the person's out. But there's only 4 of those.
What are they?
They're any form of sex, with any other person, animal or anything. Stealing, deliberately, so where it's obviously stealing. Killing a human being. And the other is making a claim that one has attained some higher state, such as that of being enlightened or something, when one knows that it's false. And it's just a boast. Those 4.
And this would be for all? Or
all monks.
All monks?
Yeah.
How, for the rules of the people that are not monks?
One must realize these are the 4 most important for the monks. There are many more rules which are much milder. I mean, for instance, most of the rules, all we need to do is go and confess it to another monk. Just pure confession. If we've done that before, and they say, well, all right, don't do it again. There's a formula.
Average Buddhist would.
But to the ordinary person, they usually take the precepts. Precepts are normally the 5, where they take the rule of training, not to kill. This means anything. The rule of training means not to kill deliberately. It's not accidental, doesn't count here. It's deliberate. It's intentional. Not to kill, not to steal, not to indulge in wrong forms of sex, not to indulge in wrong speech, and not to take drinks and drugs which cause trouble to the mind. Those are the 5. There are more for somebody who wants to go a bit further, 10. The remainder are they don't watch dancing and singing and so on. Television, I can say. They don't sleep on luxurious beds or anything luxurious. They don't handle money. And what's it now? They don't take food after midday. There's rarely on 5 more. But the ordinary lay person doesn't take those. They just take the first 5. And it is said that these are the sort of basic minimum for the human state. Anybody who goes against these is in some way going against the human state. I've said that if they maintain those, they maintain the human state. As far as rebirth goes, they'll be born as a human being.
I would like to ask you if it would be all right for me to take your picture.
Yes.
And also, I know tomorrow is a big feast day for you.
Yes.
What will you do tomorrow to celebrate?
First of all, it's the Pañña, which is the recitation of the rules. We do that in the morning quite early. Secondly, we are entering the Pañña, and there's not much. It's really just a formal saying that we will stay here for the 3 months of the Pañña. We present the teacher with some gifts and so on. But as far as the ceremony goes, there's very little.
You will become famous in my monastery.
Oh.
Because I will share with them my experience with you.
Good.
What do you think about Western monasticism?
I don't know enough about it really. I mean, I know what I've heard, but I haven't actually ever lived in a Western monastery and seen it. A lot of it's very good, I think. There are, I'm quite sure, an enormous number of very sincere people who are practicing sincerely in Western monasteries. How much they manage to attain, I don't know. I'm not in a position really to say. It's hard to say, but I'm quite sure there's a great deal of sincerity there.
One of the differences seems to be that within Western monasticism there is more of an emphasis on the community life,
Yes.
and on like prayer in common, on community decision making, governance, on doing some type of work together. From what you described, it sounds like there is more of an emphasis on the individual enlightenment, the state of mind, the mindfulness.
Yes, it's in a Western monastery. I think you come together as a community, as I say, and part of your purpose is to be a community. In the Buddhist monastery, the idea is that you come to a place that is suitable where monks can live and do their practice. The whole idea stems back to the wanderer in the forest, who's fundamentally going off on his own. I'll just tell you a little bit about the sort of idea of the forest. Somebody who goes off to the forest, first thing is they have to put up with a great deal of hardship. It's not easy living in the forest. And you haven't got many things. You can't just go out and get them and find them easily. You're often in a place where you have to walk for your food for a long period of time, quite a long time, sometimes several hours. The food is often quite inadequate. Just village food. Nothing special at all. And then you're living in a place where, at least it used to be, not so much now, there are wild animals about. Some of them very dangerous. And you've got no protection. Anyway, no external protection at all. At most, you'll just have a platform made of bamboo, just staying on that. And that's no protection against elephants and tigers. And you quite likely will see tigers. You hear them at night. And when you see these tigers, if you see them there, well, the only protection you've got is your own mind, and strength of mind. And usually you feel very frightened. And the overcoming of that fear is a very powerful training. Also, when you're in the presence of a tiger, all the nonsense is driven out. It comes down to what one really is. It's no good pretending. One knows very well that one's absolutely helpless in the face of it. Wonderful training.
Have you ever accept, or have you had non-Buddhist persons come and spend time in Rhodes for the experience, for the training?
I don't think, we haven't really, as far as I know, but I'm not sure what the teacher would think about that at all. I'm not quite sure. I can't say that. It probably depends on the person very much.
In Buddhism, our idea of the personal God, who actually our faith that we can relate to, that's very different than Buddhism. Is that correct?
Yes, the usual concepts that are held in Christianity are not the same. I'd say that. I always find one of the difficulties with the word God is to know what the word means. And when you come to probe it, it's not a simple thing at all. I would say in some meanings, I would say that we don't believe in it at all. In other meanings, maybe we do. So it's not something you can just say, we don't believe in God or we believe in God or anything of that sort. It's not a thing like that. As far as a personal God is concerned, we would rather, I think, I can only speak for my own ideas here, we'd rather say that this is something which we wouldn't use the word God for. But it's something there. We probably use the pure chitta, what I was talking about, the chitta, pure chitta. It's that which can act within one with the feeling that I am not doing. I am not doing. It's something other than that. Now, whether that's what in Christianity would be meant by the personal God, I don't know. But in Buddhism we would say that is the pure chitta. It's learning to give way, or Dhamma, we can call it Dhamma. Dhamma, which means, Dhamma is a very difficult term. It means the norm, that substratum which is underlying. Because it's underlying everything, we can't say what it is, because our saying what it is also dependent on it. In other words, we say that there is that substratum which fundamentally can only be contacted in one's own heart. I don't mean the physical heart. This can be only contacted within the heart. And everything relies on it. It's as though it's a sort of foundation to everything. Now, the things that rely on it are sensation, thought, understanding, in fact, everything we know. So if we try to know it, what are we going to know it with? We can only know it with something which has arisen from that substratum, which doesn't really tell us what it is. In other words, we can't know it in the way we know other things, but we can know it by contacting it, being. Now, whether you would call that a personal God, I don't know.
We talked about the belief in the continued existence as arising from the fact that there is unfinished business in your life. And so, it's looking at the cause and effect once again, to finish whatever that is, and really arriving at a way of perfection, therefore, it is important to, it's obvious that there's going to have to be another life to bring that to conclusion.
Yeah.
Now, if you do reach the way of, let's say, the teachers, who have reached a very high state of interior wisdom, is there some point at which it is looked upon as being a good state to not have to be reincarnated again?
Very definitely, that's the aim.
So the aim is to be...
We see this life as very definitely being, I believe you call it a veil of tears, don't you? We see it as much worse, in fact. We see it as almost demonic. We know that the demon's inside. It's not out there. These defilements, and I talked about this discontent, or suffering, if you like. There's a tendency when one talks about it to think that it's a little thing. But I don't think anybody can realize its nature until they have overcome it, even for just a very short period. To realize what it means not to have it. The difference is so enormous. The person would never be satisfied until they'd found that. Because we don't see, we're completely swamped by this discontent all the time. It's always coming up, the whole time. Every thought is coloured by it. One of the most important things in it is, of course, self. It's always self that's coming out, and it's always relating things to the self.
I think you could identify very easily with the writings of a Western monk named John Cashin. He wrote in the 4th century.
Yes.
And he really was the bridge between the early Christian Eastern monasticism in Palestine, Egypt, and those places with what has become known as Western monasticism through
John Cashin.
Cashin.
I don't know him.
He, like his conferences on the demons and on the purification and so on, are very similar to some of your sharing.
It's fun, huh? One I did like very much is Jacob Böhm. I believe he's not Catholic. I think he was one of the German school. But his writing, some of his writings seem to be very good indeed.
It seems that women are, they do not become monks, they become nuns.
Yeah.
Is their purpose exactly the same as yours, to discover the way of wisdom?
Yes. Fundamentally, yes. It seems to be very much more difficult for women. One of the difficulties seems to be women are quite clever enough. I mean, it's not that they lack any cleverness. There's nothing sort of to prevent them doing it, and there's nothing wrong with their ability to sharpen their minds and so on. One of the troubles is they can't get on together. If you put a bunch of men together, they can usually get on more or less. Put women together, they can't. I don't know why. They all seem to want to be boss. It's just the way it works. And there's always difficulty.
I heard someone say that in Thailand the monks are respected, whereas the nuns aren't necessarily as respected. Is that?
That's quite true, yes.
Why is that?
Well, one reason is that so many people, when they get old, they become a nun. Women, so it becomes all like an old people's home. It's like an old people's home.
Oh.
And when you get old people together like that, they just go on behaving as they've behaved all their life, which is gossiping together, cooking, doing all sorts of things like that all the time. And there isn't really much reason for it today. And the trouble is that when you get that happening, in quite a large number of places, the social outlook on it of non-respect grows. And then even if you get women who want to do something really properly, they find it very difficult. There are one or two places where some of them live together and they're quite good. And I know of only one old lady, she's very old now, who's quite a wonderful person. She's been out in the forests and everywhere, and she really got very far. Indeed. There's nothing to stop them doing it, really. But it always seems to be more difficult for them. There was the order of nuns one time. They used to wear robes the same as we do. But it died out. And I think whether it's a social pressure or what, I don't know. What's happening now is there's sort of ideas of trying to revive this. The only thing is they're going all wrong. Because so many of them have got sort of ideas of women's lib mixed in it, which is bringing in self and the defilements very strongly. And when that happens, everything goes wrong. It all goes in the wrong direction. And their revival won't last. I don't think there's any hope for it. The way they're doing it, it's not good at all. And the one thing that is absolutely essential is a degree of humility and a degree of acceptance.
We certainly appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you very much.
I'm very glad to meet you.
Pleasure. Thank you.